Namaste, and here we are with another episode of Ask Me Anything. Now, I find that this is becoming quite popular, and last time we had so many questions that I've had great difficulty in answering all of them. So here we are. We start with question 1, and okay. And before starting with the questions, I have to thank you, Rekha Raoji, for her contribution to Jaipur Dialogues, and we have received it with gratefulness, and we thank you for her gracious gesture. So, Atul Komane, that's the first question today. How much % of brain do normal human beings use? You really want that answer? Oh, about 5%, I guess. And of course, that depends on how you look at the normal human being. What's your definition of a normal human being? But I'm told, yes, of course, if you go to 11%, you become a genius. And I can give you a secret. You can try the higher yogic practices. You know, the Ashtanga Yoga. So the Ashtanga Yoga is 4 plus 4. The first 4, Yam, Niyam, Asana, and Pranayam, are the basic preparatory practices. A lot of people think that yoga is just about asana and pranayam. No, they are the preparatory practices. And once you go into higher yogic practices, you start using more and more of your brain. Try that. Okay. Bridge Garg. I now realize that history taught in CBSE isn't accurate. I quite agree with you. In fact, that's what I've been saying all the while. Which books would you recommend to better understand Indian history, Indian freedom struggle, and ancient texts like Vedas and Upanishads? That's a very long question and requires a very long answer. What I'll do is that I will post a list of books which I have been telling everybody who is curious about learning about Indian history. And that list was published by my friend Sandeep Balakrishna, I think in 2019, the 1st January 2019. You can try and Google it, or better would be that I would post it in my answer. What you can do is that you post this question in the comment section, and I will give you the link. So that would be better. Otherwise, it will take 10 minutes for me. Robinson Eka, as Tariq Fateh said, Muhammad bin Qasim came to murder Abdullah Shah Qazi, who was given refuge by Raja Dahir. Please elaborate. Well, this was, a fratricidal war going on between the Umayyads and the Ahl-e-Bayt. Ahl means people. The people of Bayt means the people of Muhammad. So people of house. Bayt is basically house. So people of house means the people of the house of Muhammad. So people of house of Muhammad were set upon by the Umayyads, who were basically, actually, if you go back to the history of Mecca, then the Banu Umayyad and the Banu Hashmi. Banu Hashmi was the sub-clan. The Quraysh was the main clan, and Banu Hashmi was the sub-clan of Prophet Muhammad, and Banu Umayyah was the sub-clan that was opposed to him. And later on, when Banu Umayyah was forced to convert to Islam, Banu Umayyah somehow became more powerful, and when they became more powerful, they took their revenge on Banu Hashmi. And one of the practices that they followed was to set upon the Ahl-e-Bayt and kill them wherever they could find him. So one of them had gone and taken shelter with Raja Dahir. Abdullah Shah Ghazi is one of the names, but his name was basically known as Bin Allafi. So that Bin Allafi / Shah Ghazi was the person whom Bin Qasim was given the task to capture. So this is what I can do in this short conversation. And if you want to learn more, then I can give you a hint. There's a book called Chachnama, And the Chargenama is now available, I believe, in PDF form on Google. You could read that book. That would give you far more and far better information. I can give you only a thumbnail here. Sri Rao, what came first, meditation or Vedas scriptures? I feel deep meditation was discovered first, and then Vedas or other knowledge systems were a result of that. My personal opinion is that I agree with you, because all the Vedic knowledge is actually a result of deep meditation. There is a superficial way, an outer way of looking at it, and there is an inner way or a deep meditative way of looking at it. So I give you an example that the very first shloka of Rig Ved says, Agnimile Purohitam Yagyasya Devam Ritvajam Hotaram Ratndhatamam. Now, if you look at any standard translation of this shlok, then Agni will be fire, and Yagya will be sacrifice, and Hotaram will be invocation. Dev would mean Devatas. But when you go and look at the inner meaning, which are the results of deep meditation of rishis, the meaning would be totally different. Then Agni would become your inner spark, that is Agni. And that Agni, when it goes and purifies your inner consciousness, that act of purification is that yagya, and so on and so forth. So try and look at the deep meanings, but even deep meanings are not realizable unless you go into deep meditation. And because the deep meanings are realizable through deep meditation, it is but natural for us to conclude that Vedas are the result of deep meditation of rishis. I agree with you, basically. Ramesh KS, who controls establishment in India? Is it PMO or CCS? Well, of course, it is the PMO. Cabinet Committee of Security is under the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister office is advising the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister controls the entire establishment through the PMO. And that is the case whether it is the UPA government or NDA government. So let's be very clear on this. And CCS is actually a cabinet committee of the Union Cabinet. And just like there's certain other committees, there are Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, there are Cabinet Committee on Security. All these cabinet committees are there. So those are subcommittees of the cabinet, and the person who looks after them is the cabinet secretary. But then Prime Minister acts through his office. So the PMO has the upper hand, definitely. Next, please. Dr. Deepak Guru, sir, in today's era of very few jobs and lack of revenue, should we cut down on posts like that of governor in states having stable government? Well, I can appreciate your sentiment, but then this is a constitutional post, and you need to have a constitutional amendment to do that. And there are deep ramifications of this. Governor is not just a ceremonial post. A governor is actually like the residence that the British government used to have in the princely states, and in what is called a center-heavy union of states, you do require a representative of the center in every state. Otherwise, the kind of Paris tendencies that we have, it'll become very difficult to control. Somebody like, say, a West Bengal government who wants to go rogue. They are under a bit of control only because the governor is there. Otherwise, you don't know what that government would do. Next question. Shnijis says, what made Jinnah demand for Pakistan? Well, it actually requires a long answer. And that long answer you can find in my upcoming book. That book which I took off from the Bloomsbury list and gave to Garuda. That is that book on 370 and CAA. It gives you a detailed account of why Jinnah wanted Pakistan. Because Pakistan is not just a territory, Pakistan is an idea, and that idea is implicit in the Islamic doctrine. Wherever there is Islam, it finds very difficult to coexist with any non-Islamic faith. And the zest for, or the zeal for ummat or the Islamic community is always inherent. That concept of Darul Islam and Darul Harb, and the urge to turn every Darul Harb or a non-Islamic place. Darul Harb means a house of war. They are supposed to regard a non-Islamic country as a house of war, which they have to compulsorily turn into a house of Islam. And that urge being there, that Pakistan is inherent in every situation. So Jinnah was not doing anything new. He was only articulating which has been articulated under the Islamic faith for last 1400 years. That is according to me. So of course, people think that Jinnah was trying and doing something unique, but those same sentiments had been expressed all along. Look at Shah Waliullah, look at his son, Shah Abdul Aziz, look at Sayyid Ahmad Barelvi, look at the Devbandis, look at the Barelvis under the founder, Sayyid Ahmad Raza Barelvi. Read his book, Fatawa Razviya, read Devband's book, the Hidayah, read the foundational text, the Fatawa Alamgiri. Everywhere that thread is running. So that Pakistan is there on the mind. Pakistan is an idea. Pakistan is not just a territory. So I don't blame Jinnah alone for it. Jinnah was, of course, trying to do something which has been done all through the Islamic history. Next, Bijit Singha. I want to devote my life to make higher education possible in Indian languages. Can I avail your guidance? How to reach you? You can reach me through Jaipur Dialogues. The address is given there on the website. You can always go there and reach me. And I welcome any service that you can render. And we are definitely trying to have a group that would trying to make all higher education texts available, because right now the greatest problem is the translation of these texts. And our belief is, or rather our conviction is, that unless you can get higher education provided to students in all languages, you cannot expect people to not hanker after or not run after English medium. If you're going to have higher education only in English medium, don't tell anybody that okay, you have primary education only in your native tongue or on your mother tongue. You should be able to impart higher education in everybody's mother tongue. Then you will see that people will automatically opt for the mother tongue. Ayush Patodia, what are your views on Shekhar Gupta vis-a-vis his recent venture, The Print? Is it really as centrist as it is portrayed? Well, it is about 70-30, because I have also written for The Print. So he does source his material from all over. But the leaning is still a little bit to the left. That's what I think. Okay. Next question, please. Uday, sir, did you already speak about Ma Kali cartoon posted by an ex-Muslim atheist? There was a wild reaction to it by abusing posters' real mother. Okay, I am going to be recording an episode on this with TAC TV of Canada tomorrow. So we will be talking in detail about this situation, because this atheism of the kind that these ex-Muslims sport is only replacing one hate by another hate. They are not really transforming themselves. They do not understand what they're doing. They only exchange one belief for a negative belief. So that is the problem with them. So if you're really interested, then keep tuned to TAG TV, who will be broadcasting my episode with them on this subject sometime tomorrow. Because it will be Canada time, so it may even be in the night, so you can see it next day. Okay. Ashok Patel. Sanjay ji, what is your advice to some of your YouTubers who goes to David Wood, well-known Christian apologist, to discuss without any understanding? Well, develop understanding and then you can go anywhere. If you really want to develop an understanding of Abrahamic religions, I can only advise you to go through that little monograph of mine, about 6,000, 7,000 words. It's not very long, it's not very rigorous, and it is called All Religions Are Not the Same. So that will help you develop an understanding of what Christianity is like, or what Abrahamic religions are exactly like. You understand the fundamentals, then you will be able to make all kind of derivatives out of that. So please do. Next question. AR. Does UPSC take IB clearances for selected candidates? No, it doesn't. It takes police clearance. Also, please elaborate on confidential report about UPSC, which you mentioned earlier today. Well, okay, this confidential report that I'm talking about is that there is a move to start amending the syllabus of UPSC, and some of us are trying to help them do it. And of course, we have to keep putting pressure on them to revise their syllabus and revise their methodology of interviews. And as far as IB clearances is concerned, no, selected candidates, they take police clearance. And there may be cases where they might take IB clearance, such as in some cases in Jammu and Kashmir, or where there are some inputs available. Otherwise, they take police clearance. And police usually looks at the police record, and gives a clean chit if there is no police record. If there's a police record, then the police tells the UPSC accordingly. That's what the system has been till now. Okay, next. Atul Komane. Can we become God by using 100% brain in all fields, physics, chemistry, biology, and meditation? Atulji, you really want me to answer that? Okay. I suppose, what should I say? So because you cannot use 100%, so you cannot become God? I wouldn't say that. I haven't. Let me take you to Ishopanishad, which says, Isha vasamidam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. That Ishwar is present in every grain of this universe. So Ishwar is already present in you. All you need to do is to discover Ishwar within you. So once you've discovered the Ishwar within you by taking the yogic path, and all the paths are available to you. You can take Bhakti Marg, you can take Jnana Marg, you can take Yoga Marg. Whatever suits your constitution and whatever suits your mental disposition, you can adopt. So why do you think of this 100% and 90%? And that is not something that is even measurable. So please try and discover the Ishwar within you. As they say, I often recite this shloka, that Bhavani Shankaro Vande Siddha Vishwasa Rupino Yabhyam Vina Na Pashyanti Siddha Swantah Sthamishwaram. The Ishwar that is within you. So meditate upon it. Use Shraddha and Vishwas. That's the way. Abhishek Mangudkar. I have started reading Pakistan or Partition of India. Please recommend more books to understand real Indian history. Thank you. You can read the Voice of India books. Sitaram Goel and Ram Sarup ji. They have written wonderful volumes. So, and Voice of India books most of them are available online except a few. So you can just check Voice of India books and you will get the entire lot on your desktop or laptop, or even on your mobile. So I recommend Voice of India books. 80. Do you think CBI will have free hand to prosecute the murderers of Rajput, even high-level politicians? I think this question should be asked to Arnab Goswami. And I am not Arnab Goswami. In fact, you might have noticed that is one case on which I have refrained from commenting, because everybody else seems to be doing just that. So I see no reason to suspect that everybody would not be prosecuted. And of course, They need prosecution sanction only in cases of sedition. They do not need prosecution sanction in cases of murder or conspiracy or drug NDPS cases. They do not require any sanction to prosecute. Sanction to prosecute is required only in cases of 124A. Next question. Abhinandan Kalia. How can we make Hinduism a global missionary religion? Which caste will new converts belong to? Okay. You don't have to belong to a caste. The Sanatan Dharma is like that. And this is a very, very wrong notion that has been filled in that you have to belong to a caste. The first time this mandate or this was made compulsory was in 1871. When the 1871 census, the British demanded that everybody identify their varna. They have to fit themselves. They force-fitted everybody into the four varnas. And almost 50% people did not know which varna they belonged to. A very curious case, I'll tell you. The Yadava Jati. Now, Yadava Jati has ruled most of the, what you would call, most of the Deccan and even South India, for instance, the Vijayanagar Empire. They were Yadavas. And even today, the Vodiyars, they're Yadavas, Rashtrakutas. So they did not know where to fit themselves in. So what the British did was they force-fitted Yadavas into the fourth Varna. And today Yadavas are OBCs, whereas one of our greatest, and the Purnavatar, the only Purnavatar among the Dashavatar, is supposed to be a Yadav. So it's a very curious situation, but that is created by this whole caste system was created by the British and blamed on the Brahmins. That is a very big topic. I think we'll probably require one full session just to discuss that. How can we make Hinduism a global missionary religion? Again, I have done 2 videos on this with R. Jagannathan. In fact, one video was dedicated only to this topic, why Hinduism should become a missionary religion. I guess it is there on the Jaipur Dialogues, and rather than recall all of them, and where we advocated that you cannot have a defensive mindset all the time. You have to invest in expansion. And only by changing that mindset can you actually continue to exist. Otherwise, there is no guarantee that since you've survived the last 1,000 years, you will also survive the next 1,000 years. So you have to invest in some kind of missionary expansion. You can check that particular video with R. Jagannathan. QW, why is now a divide in the R wing, Swami versus non-Swami gang? Pained to see your retweet against Dr. Swami. Detailed answer, please. You see, this forum is not for detailed answer, first of all. But you cannot expect everybody in that big umbrella called right wing to act as a herd. And I think the greatest thing about right wing is that they do not act in a herd, and they have a number of compartments. There is a right wing, which is extreme conservative and almost like, what we call the trads or the paramparavadis. Then there is a centrist group, people like us, who try and look everything rationally. And of course, we are wedded to the fundamentals of Sanatan principles. And when I say fundamentals, I refer you to my book, All Religions Are Not the Same. And then there is another big compartment that is basically anti-left. And anti-left is actually, you can call them economic right wing. So this economic right wing is what originally Dr. Swami represented. But then he has this penchant for moving from compartments to compartments, and I just reserve my comment on that. And please do not expect me to be a blind camp follower of everyone. I use my own brain. Shnijis Major Gaurav Arya said Turkey is supporting ISIS. Is Turkey a terrorist country? You know, I don't know whether you watched my episode with Tufail Chaturvedi. He said a beautiful thing that is the problem with the Islamic societies is that they are always on the boil. You know, there is something simmering underneath, and when the heat is mild, then it's just a low simmer, and they're kind of lukewarm. They remain lukewarm. Then if the heat becomes a little more, then becomes hot, and then the heat can go up to such a level that starts steaming, and then the steam starts getting created, and then that throws the lid off and escapes. And in these communities, you never know when a man will turn into steam. So this is what is happening with Turkey today, because the level of heat that is being generated from within by the Mullah, Maulvi, and Ashraf groups, which always lead them to this path, that has become so much that Turkey is now turned into steam, and it has escaped that lid of that vessel, and it is creating havoc everywhere. They created havoc in Syria. Most of the problem in Syria was because of Turkey. Then now Erdogan, he fancies himself as the new caliph. And the caliphate, of course, the Khilafat-e Osmania, or the Osmanian Caliphate, which was thrown out around about early 1920s, he seeks to revive that. So he fancies himself as the new caliph, the leader of the entire Ummat, or the entire Muslim community all over the world. Well, that's such a heady kind of an emotion that he would go to any extent to secure that. And the easiest way he thinks they can do that is by creating strife everywhere. There's always, especially in the Abrahamic religions, a conflict is always there. In fact, the whole basic fundamental is conflict. So it's not a surprise at all. Dr. Deepak Guru, sir, many people don't know reality of communists but get brainwashed by their videos. When we try to correct them, they abuse us. How do we deal? Well, it depends on how you try to correct them. Once a person is in a brainwashed condition, and you go and tell him that he's wrong, then he is not likely to listen to you. So you have to work on him. You have to make him amenable to at least listen to you. It is only when he is ready to listen to you that he would react and give you a positive response. So there are various ways. If you can just, make them read something rather than preach to them. If you can encourage them to read some literature, like, the beautiful book in Hindi, Kahani Communiston Ki. I think anybody who reads that book would actually know the reality of the communists. Or there are very many books about the communists, about Stalinism and Maoism. And people who read them, they actually turn against communists. So it's your skill how you get them to read these things. First, make them read before you start telling them anything. And the best thing is to make them read, and they coming back to start asking questions. Once that happens, then you know that the man is ready to receive. And that is the time that you can try and start bringing him back. Otherwise, if you start straight away telling him something, he's not likely to listen. Ahmed, did Sufis, Shias, Ahmadi take lead to divide Bharat to gain acceptance within larger Ummah and impress Sunnis and show that they are bigger moment? Please talk about economy. Talk about economy. I can keep talking whole day about economy, so that I don't know what you really want me to talk about. Economy is suffering because of COVID, not just in India, but everywhere else. That's why bland reaction to this last part of your question. And the first part of your question, yes. Who are the Sufis? Sufis are Sunnis only. The entire Indian Hanafi Islam is Sufi. Fatawa Alamgiri is what? It is a Sufi doctrine. And ultimately, this Deoband Barelvi schism is also on the nature of prophet and the nature of prophethood. You do not think that the Deobandis are more amenable to you or the Barelvis are more amenable to you. What if you start reading Fatawa Razviya? They have a whole chapter called Nafrat ke Ahkamat, commandments of hatred. And their founder, Sayyid Ahmad Raza Barelvi, has given copious volumes on how to hate mushrikeen and how to hate other non-believers, and graded them in various priorities and preferences, and exactly told them, okay, how to hate them. So, yes. So Sufis are Sunnis, Shias are Shias. Ahmadiyas, of course, they were very, very vocal about it. Zafarullah Khan was one of the main authors of the Pakistan resolution. So the answer to the first part of your question is a resounding yes. Bala Bolo, why don't you have a portal which has all details of all Chinese assets in India from 1947 onwards and their action deeply analyzed for common people? Well, we can have a general portal, but I do not intend to have a portal dedicated only to Chinese assets. I think that's the job of defense portals. And I'm not running a defense portal. Of course, I do know a lot about defense. That's why I keep talking about it. I have very deep knowledge of geography and history. And one of the basic prerequisites for being a good defense analyst is to know the geography and history of a country. And that is why I keep doing defense analysis from time to time. Bharat Ved Prakash, your opinion on issue raised by Sudarshan on UPSC. I've given my opinion. I gave my opinion. In fact, I don't exactly agree with what Sudarshan says. And I told them on their show also. And I did a separate show also on the UPSC. I think it was 2 days back. You can have a look there. I told them that this is because of the leftist bias that these kind of dichotomies arise. What you see is because of the inherent leftist bias. So whether they give more marks to one set of students or they give less marks to another set of students, the effect would be the same. So while Sudarshan says that they are giving more marks to a set of students, I say no. What they are doing is that they are giving lesser marks to those students who they think do not subscribe to the leftist ideology. And that results in these kind of distortions. That is my opinion. Okay, next one. Worst GDP cause of lockdown in the world. Does government have enough resources and vision to bounce back? Meher, let me tell you something. Economy has never been the obsession of the Indian people. I mean, it sounds very strange, but when you start looking at reaction of Indian population in terms of reaction of the American population, then you get India all wrong. This is what is happening with Rahul Gandhi. Because Rahul Gandhi is trying to look at India from a Western lens. All his advisors are foreign brats or foreign returned or communists or people who have absolutely no roots in India. They don't understand. They've never been to villages. They've never experienced the lived reality of this country. So that is why they keep talking about these things. Economy is important, but the Indian wisdom is not about black and white. And I tell all of you to read again and again, all religions are not the same, because the logic, the system through which a lay Indian gains his knowledge is not the two-valued system of the West, the binary, what we call the system in which there are only two values, right and wrong. No, there is also a third value here, which is right and wrong and in between, true, false, maybe, right, wrong, maybe right, maybe wrong. So these three values are the minimum values that an Indian sports. And we get disconnected from these values because our system of education is highly westernized. And those Western values of binaries, the Western values, the two value system, they take hold of us, and then we are unable to appreciate this. Yes, economy has been impacted and been impacted the world over. It will take some doing to come out of it. And unlike the West, where they would blame this person or that person, you will find that Indians have a far greater understanding of this. Why they have a far greater understanding is because their perspective of cosmology, their perspective of a time concept is very different. That's what produces the famous Indian tolerance. That's what produces the famous Indian fortitude. That's what produces the famous Indian patience. And when all these values are there, they are liable to take these things in a stride and not blame one person for it. Why they will not blame one person for it is because their worldview is multi-valued. I know that what I'm saying may not be intelligible straight away, so that's why I tell you to please read that monograph of mine. All religions are not the same, to be able to understand this. Yogesh Soman, how easy will it be to teach Sanatan to people having taught by hate speeches all their life? Very easy. Whoever I have tried to teach through the rational method, because these days the rational method is the most popular because of the Western influence. I found great reception and people have responded, and I hardly have a single dissident. So please try. Once again, I take you to all religions are not the same. I don't know whether my director has a copy of that, so he can display it for you. But he certainly can give you a link from that Medium series which I have written. And I intend to expand on it over the next few months and maybe bring it out in a book volume. Bala Bolo, also, why don't Forces of Sanatan create a common web platform where all our dharmas, millions of untranslated Sanskrit texts are translated? Good thought, very good thought. Maybe something like this could be attempted, and I know a few people who are trying to do that. And we would probably need volunteers because there isn't much funding coming our way as on date. Maybe in the new education policy, we could also get some support from the state system. And if that happens, then we could actually accelerate this process, definitely. Aditya Srivastav, why right wing doesn't have a strong front like left wing have, and why you all don't form a bigger platform like a news portal or something? Good question. But I explained to you that plurality is inherent in the Indian value system. And all of us say that it is a desirable value system. If it is a desirable value system, then it is also not proper for us to aspire for some kind of a centralized form, like the Abrahamic religions have some kind of a centralized system. The centralized systems have never worked here. It is a plural federation that has worked in India. And my opinion is that if we value that plurality, if we value that multi-valued logic, if we value that cyclical time concept, if we value that infinite cosmology, if we value that direct evidence as being the highest degree of proof, then we have to be ready to accept this diversity. Next, Nikhil Sharma. So does jihad with sword, Ghazwa-e-Hind, etc. really has its roots in the Quran? or the Quran has rather been modified to include all this. You'd be surprised that Quran has had in the past, in the up till the 10th century, different interpretations. And there used to be rationalist schools which used to dispute the interpretation that the Asherites, or the people who believe in these hadiths, the what is called the Shariat or the Sharia, they believed in Sharia, or rather they propagated the Sharia. Some people say that they invented the Sharia. So there was a bloody battle in the 9th century between the Mutazalis and the Asherites, and the Asherites won. And after they won, they forced their kind of versions. The last 1,000 years, it is that version which has prevailed. And if you're going by that version, then yes, their version of the Quran does preach complete exclusivism and complete domination of all other systems and all other beliefs. And it seeks to convert the whole world into Islam. And if necessary, through sword. So that's what the Islamic situation is actually. What do you think of postponing JEE campaign? Only a section of right wing seemed to support it. Any propaganda here? Why didn't Modi postpone? I'll tell you, this was, I found this very strange, that some people think that anything that a few people will support has become a populist cause. I know so many boys and girls who have been preparing for JEE and NEET, and they were aghast at the prospect of having to forego a full year. And there is no better evidence than direct evidence. And what is the direct evidence? Well, more than 85% of people have taken the exams finally. And that's the normal percentage in any exam. In any competitive exam, if more than 75% people turn up, that means that exam has been a success. And here 85% people have downloaded their admit cards, and the real figures will come out. I don't think there was any support among the student community. It was only those who didn't have a hope in hell of going through the JEE and NEET who were creating this clamor, and some fools got along with them. So I never supported. I didn't even once say that JEE and NEET should be postponed. In fact, a couple of times I had probably sounded a discordant note. Next question. Yuvraj Singh, sir, your opinion on scientific bureaucracy. As bad as our bureaucracy. In my master's and PhD, I've seen the severe rot in an IIT and a reputed CSI lab. I agree with you completely. Even the selection process to a scientist position lacks transparency. I agree with you 100%. Bureaucracy is bureaucracy. What happens is that we tend to mistake bureaucracy only for IAS and IPS. We forget that every institution, even a kirana shop for that matter, even a big kirana shop, has its bureaucracy. And bureaucrats, by definition, are status quoists. Their job is to hold up the status quo and protect their positions. Any bureaucracy you take. It is only an enlightened leadership that can create situation where bureaucracy will really work towards nation's progress. You cannot expect bureaucrats to be activists, period. If you want them to become activists, then you have to give them the kind of freedom, the kind of security that an activist would require. Right now, there is no such situation. So whether scientific bureaucracy, normal bureaucracy, any bureaucracy, or hypermalls bureaucracy, all the same. Shubham Jaju, is Afghanistan a part of Indian civilization since Pashto is an Iranic language? Rig Veda shows awareness of that region, so are Pashtun people Indic or Iranic? Yesterday only, we had this great discussion with Professor Subhash Kak. I suggest you Please listen to that discussion. And there he talked about the links of the Avestan language, the precursor to Persian. The links of the Avestan language with the late Rigvedic Sanskrit. Avestan is a daughter language of the Vedic Sanskrit. So, whether Pashto is Iranian or Pashto is Indian, it boils down to the same thing. It is ultimately a granddaughter or great-granddaughter of Sanskrit, exactly like all our languages are, except Tamil, which is a daughter language of Vedic Sanskrit. All other languages are granddaughters of Vedic Sanskrit. That is, classical Sanskrit is also a daughter language of Vedic Sanskrit. And all others are daughters of Vedic Sanskrit. Tamil is a direct daughter of Vedic Sanskrit. Others are daughters of classical Sanskrit. So they are granddaughters of Vedic Sanskrit. Pashto could be a great-granddaughter. That's all. Prayas. So what nationalists are doing for defense manufacturing and R&D? Do you think we need that kind of companies running by nationalists? You see, defense manufacturing and R&D, it requires something more than just emotion. If you're a nationalist, it's fine. But beyond a nationalist, you have to be a competent businessman. That is the first requirement for going into defense and defense R&D. And then you have to be a competent technical man. That is the second requirement. So the competence in that order, business acumen, your technological acumen, your R&D acumen, and if you're also a nationalist to boot, then all the better. Ayush Patodia, what is your outlook on social unrest because of the looming unemployment crisis, since construction and travel has been the worst hit industries? You see, as long as COVID is there, I do not see any unrest, because organizing an unrest is very difficult. And most of the unrest is actually organized unrest, not only in this country, in most other countries as well. And that unrest happens only in democratic countries. And because of COVID, nobody is coming out. I do not see any unrest. There is no unrest happening, and everybody understands that this is not a situation brought about by the government. This is a situation brought about by the elements, and the government is trying its best to cope up with it, and it's done very well. Our rates of infection, our rates of death are much, much lower than the most advanced countries. So there you have to give credit to the government. You don't go by only the absolute numbers. Look at your population also. So whenever you look at the rate, you have to look at the rate per million. That is the parameter. And if you look at that parameter, I think you would really have no other option except to appreciate the present government. Vinay Patil, GDP plunge, what is your view? Well, GDP plunge was very natural. That is my view. In this kind of a situation, this kind of a GDP plunge had to happen. Once you lock down the entire country in order to, you must understand why the country was locked down. The country was not locked down that it would completely eradicate the disease. No, that wasn't the intention. The intention behind lockdown was that you delay the process so that in the interim, the country is able to ramp up its reaction, ramp up its response, build up enough capacities, build up enough testing, build up enough hospital beds. And that could happen only if all the population was kept in one place for some time. And once that capacity has been built up, the restrictions are being lifted up, even though the infection levels are much higher in terms of absolute number. Even then, the government is able to lift up these restrictions because it is confident that it can take care of all the people who get infected. And that has happened only because they clamped down in the beginning. Those who did not clamp down suffered grievously. Look at Italy, look at Britain, what their condition was when because the infection soared right in the beginning, and they just didn't have the capacity to tackle that. Here, they locked down, and the first 2 months, they built up enough capacity so that there was no panic. The only thing happened was, of course, there was a little difficulty in implementing the return of migrant labor. But after that, there's no panic as such. The difficulty is there because it's a difficult situation. Everybody has to face it together. Next question, please. Yogesh is asking, how do we make people read Quran and Marx? Well, we have to tell them to read the Quran and Marx, because unless you do what is called a Purva Paksh, or research or the intentions of your adversaries, then you cannot build what is called defenses. You have to know the enemy's strength to be able to build your own defenses. So it is in this manner we can encourage people to do Purva Paksh, and you tell them why it is necessary, and maybe they will listen. That's what I keep doing. I keep doing all this all the time. I keep telling people to read these Marxist theories and the Quran and the Tafsir. Shivam Goel, can we clean IS, etc. exams from JNU communist Islamism? How and how Modi government is going to do it? As we know, government will do these things unless the public pressure is put on them. So I suggest, because our job is to generate awareness, and if I think we have, people like us have generated enough awareness, then it is for all of us to start putting pressure. And these days we have a wonderful tool called social media to put pressure on the government. If you put pressure on the government will definitely react, because this government, I know, is a responsive government, and especially through social media, it does try and connect to people. Next question, please. Girish Ambasth. Recently, Hagia Sophia was very popular in TV debate. Let me know, what is Hagia Sophia? I expect you to ask questions which have some element of, discussion. This is a quiz question. And you could simply have Googled it and found out what Hagia Sophia is. And Hagia Sophia is the biggest was the biggest church of the Eastern Christianity, the Orthodox Church. And then after the Ottoman Caliphate came, they converted into a mosque. And when this secular government under Kamal Pasha came, they could not restore it to a church, but then they converted into a museum. And now Erdogan has reconverted it into a mosque. That's what it is. I would also request other people, please do not ask these questions. That you can do. You can Google it and find out. Tejus M. Any chance for war between India and China in October, November? You see, this is too much of a guess to hazard whether there would be a war. Right now, India is in advantageous position after what they did in the last 3 days of August. They have put China completely on the defensive. And China had its advantages only in the ground forces. And in the Air Force situation, it was always lagging behind the Indian capacities in this sector. And now that it has been put on the back foot in the ground forces as well, I think the chances of war have probably receded. Next. DPS जादौन, आमिर खान का तुर्की का फर्स्ट लेडी से मिलना क्या इस ओर इशारा है कि मुसलमानों को सऊदी अरब से बेवफाई कर तुर्की को अपना सिरमौर मारना है? देखिए साहब, पाकिस्तान जो है ना, ये भाड़े का टट्टू है, मर्सनरी समझते हैं आप, ये है भाड़े का टट्टू। इसको जहाँ से खैरात मिलेगी वहाँ चला जाएगा ये, हिंदुस्तान के अलावा, क्योंकि पाकिस्तान का निर्माण जो है वो भारत से घृणा के बेसिस पे हुआ है, इसलिए भारत के अलावा वो किसी के पास भी चला जाएगा। कल को अगर ताजिकिस्तान या कजाकिस्तान के पास पैसा हो तो वो भी पाकिस्तान को खरीद सकता है। ये तो वेश्या है बाजार में खड़ी हुई और अपने आप को बेच रही है कि भाई ठीक है, जो आओ वो बोली लगाओ और ख़रीद लो। अब सऊदी अरब नहीं ख़रीद रहा तो तुर्की के पास चली गई कि तुम ख़रीद लो। तुर्की को अगर खरीदना होगा तो खरीद लेगा, अगर ज़रूरत होगी उसको, नहीं खरीदना होगा तो नहीं खरीदेगा। चीन के पास तो रोज़ जाता ही है कि भाई हम तो बिकने के लिए तैयार हैं, दाम लगा दो। बगैर दाम के वो चीन से भी नहीं बिकने वाले हैं, ये ध्यान रहे। आगे अतुल कुमाने, when will Indians start making invention? How Hinduism and Sanatan Dharma help in this? Well, I think we are seized of that problem, and somebody like Sankrant Sanu, if you know him, and with whom I have had discussions, and we are trying to, again, ultimately we have to put pressure on the government, and we are trying to put pressure on the government to create an ecosystem where we are not cyber coolies, and we are actually inventors, and we invent products. And similarly, this whole business of easy import under the WTO system, especially from China, it discouraged a lot of inventions from happening in India. And it's good that China displayed its hand early, and we got rid of China, or rather we're in the process of getting rid of China. So when these kind of things happen, actually what they say, that very old saying that necessity is the mother of invention. And once the necessity gets created, as it is getting created now, I think that would probably build the ecosystem for invention. And for one thing, there are not many people in bureaucracy who understand what that ecosystem would be. And people like us who do have an idea, we keep trying to impress upon the government as to how to build an ecosystem. And once that ecosystem is there, the Indians have the genius to be the best, and they were the best till about the turn of 15th, 16th century. Next. Satyajit Kumar, did India lose the moment to become a new global supply chain? Where do we lack to fulfill the vacuum? I don't think that moment is past, not yet. And there's still a lot of things happening, and a lot of shaking up happening. The global supply chains haven't really dislodged themselves fully from China. When they do, the Indians have to be ready to welcome them. And of course, I think our grand opposition, whatever little is left of it, is one of the main sticking points. Why they create impediments every time there is an opportunity to create a global supply chain. I hope, one of the worst advertisements that you can give is when an existing and a very prosperous industry like Sterlite Copper is shut down because of, I would say, enemy action. What happened in Tuticorin with Sterlite Copper was nothing except enemy action headed by evangelists and prompted by China. Because China feared India's growing clout in copper, India had become a net exporter. And by successfully bribing these evangelists to create mayhem there and getting that plant to shut down, they made India a net importer and China benefited. So, rule of law and ease of business, they are necessary part of the ecosystem, but they have to be implemented very, very well. And when you implement it well, what happens is what happened to UP. From number 12, they went to number 2, and a lot of people are making a beeline to UP to set up industries. I hope the Yogi government continues for some more time, and then UP itself could be transformed. The Bimaro state could actually become an industrial state. So that's the sort of ecosystem that every state has to bring in. Ultimately, the industrial action in India depends more on the states. Okay. Abu to shaky, whatever that means. How important do you think it is for Hindus to start learning, reading Urdu? I think it is important because once you read Urdu, then you know what your adversary is thinking, because the Islamists, which most of the Ashraf clan is, the Ashraf clan is that upper echelon of Muslims who are who think that they have descended from Arabs and Turks and Persians, and they also include some of the upper class converts from India, and they control the Mullah Maulvi class, and through them they control the entire population because of a principle that is called taqleed. And therefore, if you are able to read Urdu, then you would be able to read Urdu newspapers, and you would know on a daily basis as to what is cooking. And once you know what is cooking, you would be able to create defenses. Because I can read Urdu, you would have seen that I am able to thwart a lot of these narratives. Okay. नेक्स्ट, शंकराचार्य स्वामी निश्चलानंद जी के अनुसार जाति प्रथा सभी वर्तमान समस्याओं का समाधान है। मैं स्वामी निश्चलानंद जी से अधिकतर विषयों पर उनसे मैं सहमति नहीं रखता हूँ। ये मैं आपको निवेदन कर दूँ, विशेषकर जो उनका जाति और वर्ण के बारे में जो उन्होंने जो अपने मत व्यक्त किए, उनसे मैं सहमति नहीं रखता हूँ। और इसके ऊपर मेरा एक लेख है medium.com में, और उसमें मैंने अधिकार और परंपरावादियों की जो समस्याएं हैं उनके ऊपर टिप्पणी की है। और उसमें ये कहा है कि कहीं पर जो हमारे मूल सिद्धांत हैं उनसे ये संभवतः सहमत नहीं लगते हैं, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ प्रत्यक्ष प्रमाण सबसे पहला प्रमाण है। स्वामी निश्चलानंद जी कहते हैं कि आगम प्रमाण जो है वो प्रत्यक्ष प्रमाण से ऊपर है, ये शास्त्रोक्त नहीं है, ये शास्त्र सम्मत नहीं है। तो इसलिए मैं स्वामी निश्चलानंद जी से आदर सहित मत भिन्नता रखता हूँ। आगे, उदय सर, हाउ डू वी एड्रेस द थ्रेट ऑफ डेमोग्राफिक चेंज? वेल, फॉर वन, you could not overrate and overdo and over magnify this threat, because if you really study demographics, then I think most scientific demographers would tell you that this is an exaggerated claim, though it does help in building a counter narrative. But if you really look at it scientifically, it's probably more exaggerated. Anyway, you could try and study scientific demography as well. रजत शर्मा जी पूछें, क्या वैश्विक भारतीय स्तर पर धार्मिक, राष्ट्रवादी, बुद्धिजीवी व पत्रकारों का कोई महासम्मेलन संगठन की व्यवस्था हो सकती है? न सिर्फ हो सकती है बल्कि होती भी है। अभी कुछ ही दिनों पहले हिंदुओं का एक महासम्मेलन हुआ था अमेरिका में, मेरे ख्याल से शिकागो में हुआ था। उसके अलावा भी टेक्सास में हुआ था, बहुत सारे लोग गए थे वहाँ पे। यहाँ से, हमारे जयपुर से भी कई लोग गए थे। मुझको भी कहा था लोगों ने जाने से, लेकिन मैं उस समय, मेरे लिए संभव नहीं था जा पाना, तो मैं नहीं गया था। तो ये तो होता रहता है। आपका विश्व हिंदू परिषद कितने इस तरह से कराता रहता है आपके, और कुछ सरकारी संस्थाएं भी कराती रहती हैं। यद्यपि ICCR का जो उनका जो मुख्य किरदार है वो सांस्कृतिक है, लेकिन वो भी संस्कृति के जो अलग अलग समावेशी कुछ कार्यक्रम कराते रहते हैं। तो ये होता रहता है, इसमें कोई ऐसी नई बात नहीं जी। नेक्स्ट, भारत वेद प्रकाश, हैज द करंट गवर्नमेंट एम्पावर्ड द ब्यूरोक्रेटिक रॉट? एंड दिस इज अ वेरी confusing question. Sheth Prakash ji, why should anybody empower a rot? I think what you mean to ask is whether the current government has contributed to the bureaucratic rot. No, I don't think so. They may not have improved it much, but they haven't contributed to it, definitely. Street plant babai. Why can't Hindus enforce a simple idea as eating jhatka? They are doing it. Now Vishwa Hindu Parishad has taken it up. And I would tell you that Jaipur Dialogues was the first organization in the country to have a discussion, have a structured discussion on it. You see our last Jaipur Dialogues videos, and since then it has caught on so much. Just imagine within 1 year, less than 1 year, how much progress we have made. That now Vishwa Hindu Parishad has officially taken this up. Next. Yogesh Soman is Marathi, also a first generation Sanskrit, given the pronunciation. Yes, it's a daughter language of classical Sanskrit. Satish Das, UPSC Jihad as claimed by Sudarshan and you. I haven't claimed that, sorry. As well as shared some data on Twitter. What are the plans for countering this? It seems that we Hindus are not very well organized as sons of invaders. You have to expose the leftist. My view in this is very clear. That it is wherever you have a leftist domination, you will have these problems. So identify the leftist and create a noise, create a proper noise. Sudarshan is doing is that it is unnecessarily trying to paint one community and trying to blame it on the interview process. And a lot of misgivings are there. People say, okay, there's an Islamic studies paper. There's no Islamic studies paper. Why don't you just go through the syllabus? There's nothing. Okay, Urdu is there, so Urdu will be checked by those who know Urdu. There is also Santhali, there is also Bodo, there is also Konkani, there is also Dogri, there is also Kashmiri. You could say the same thing. That's not, we have this knack of getting carried away by emotion. Get to the nub. Focus on the real issue. And the real issue is that there should be no leftist in the interview board. This is what I'm taking up. You support me. You take it up yourself as well. And there is enough direct evidence for that. The issue that Sudarshan is taking up, there's only indirect evidence. But what I am taking up, there is direct evidence. Can we expect a law about jhatka for non-Muslim? Well, there isn't a law even for halal, so why should there be a law? This has to be community action. So you should all join the community action. Dr. Deepak Guru, sir, how do we know our true calling and what are we supposed to do in life so that we realize our full potential? Okay, I mean, you want spiritual answer or you want a temporal answer? I am not clear. If you want a spiritual answer, then your calling is liberation. If you want a temporal answer, that you do well in life. Next question. Lee Lannister. What are your views on superstition and our religion? We can see people are becoming dumber and more radical rather than logical if we talk about eradicating superstition in our religion. What about Shastrarth and Reform Parampara? Are we becoming like Abraham trash? Well, what is superstition? What do you regard as superstition? The superstition, there is nothing like superstition in Sanatan Dharma. There are only what we call different pramana systems and different paths. If you say Bhakti Marg is a superstition, I'm sorry, it is not superstition, it's the valid path. If you say that Gyan Marg, of course, you would appreciate Gyan Marg, but then Gyan Marg, the medium is intellect. And the tattva, the essence is what is called logic or tark. But intellect is limited. In Bhakti Marg, the medium is manas, the mind or the emotional mind. And its flights are unlimited. You don't call that superstition. You have to understand, Mr. Lannister, Leo Lannister, I suppose it is a pseudonym. It seems you have to understand the fundamentals of Sanatana Dharma. And to understand the fundamentals, I once again recommend you to my monograph, All Religions Are Not the Same. Once you read through that, and once you watch my videos on All Religions Are Not the Same, and of course there is another 3 parts coming soon, then you would understand that what we call superstition is something else. And the real superstition is where direct evidence is not admissible. It's a complex question. I have given you the clue. Please read that, and then maybe we can discuss again. Tech ops. More than political ideology, economic power is helping radicals fight out. Fighting them will not be sustainable for us. Your thoughts? Yes, economic power is definitely important for giving the sustenance to radicals. But then India is not that weak. India is not that weak, and the Arabs are losing steam. It is China which is the real problem these days. And this is all mixed up. China is against Islam, but in Pakistan, in India, China will support Islamists. But China is against Islam within China. But in Europe, it will fan troubles via Islamists. So all these, there's a lot of political things that get mixed up. The answer is not that easy. So you have to go case by case. Chetan Agarwal, Sanjay ji, how do you see the future of India in terms of identity? If and when will we be able to completely dismantle the fraud secularism and declare India as Hindu Rashtra? I'm happy you asked this question, and I think the future is good. Why future is good is because the Indians have started gathering more self-esteem all over the world. And this restlessness and this great chatter that you see on the social media is because of that rediscovering of the identity, rediscovering of our great heritage, rediscovering of our roots. It is only because of that that we feel so much of anxiety to rediscover our identity. So Renaissance has begun. This is my declaration. The Renaissance, the Hindu Renaissance has begun. How much time it will take, that I cannot say. But I think I should be able to see it in my lifetime. That is my hope. And that is what my optimism tells me. Next, please. Yeah, so right wing doesn't have a stronger hold in media in the world. You see, please get out of these compartments, right wing and left wing, because the right wing has a very different meaning in, say, USA and Europe than it has in India. Many news which actually speaks for RW, mostly in India, but millennials still like more NDTV, etc. NDTV? Are you serious? The NDTV is not in the first 10, even with Ravish Kumar yapping all day long. So I don't think the number of millennials is that less. NDTV is out of the first 10 in English as well as in Hindi. In English, it may still be there because they're probably not full 10 channels at the national level. But in Hindi, it is definitely out. So NDTV is no threat. And as far as the millennials are concerned, you have to keep communication on with them. If you keep a communication on and talk to them through the rational element in your discourse, and you will win them over. Don't teach them bhakti, teach them jnana marg. Bala Bolo, why don't you start analysis of Kailash temples and many temples in South India? We did that once. We did that with Abhas Maldayar, who is an architect. West is still clueless about how they were built. Young kids need know. Yes, we did that particular episode with Abhas, in which we were asking him how he turned from communist into an ex-communist. And he actually gave the credit to Kailash temple. You must watch that episode. And I think that is something that episode can be shown to many communists and many millennials. How a die-hard communist turned into an ex-communist after visiting Kailash temple at Ellora. Next question. Hitesh Akul, what do you think about RSS as an organization? Great organization. Very much devoted to Bharat Mata. And of course, a very good thing about it is that it is happy to it is happy to accept everybody's contribution, and it works in a very decentralized manner. Until recently, it did not even used to talk about itself. A lot of people like us told them that you have to talk about yourself in today's world. If you do not, then all that adverse propaganda will stick to you. So it is only now that they have started talking about themselves. Otherwise, they didn't used to even talk about themselves, because they used to think that their service and their devotion will probably endear them to the people. But in the world of propaganda, you have to keep talking about and uh, keep refuting the propaganda that is made against you. Will Tamil as national language unify Akhand Bharat? Why do you want a national language? Well, there's only one national language that I can think of, and which Dr. Ambedkar also said, and that language is Sanskrit. Because Sanskrit is something that, Tamilians consider it as an equal. So Sanskrit and have Tamil, I don't mind. Next, apprenticeship details. I don't know, what is that? Whose apprenticeship details are you asking, Yogesh? My apprenticeship details? My apprenticeship details? Well, I graduated as a marine engineer, and I was apprenticed in Calcutta Port Trust workshop and Mazagon Docks workshop, if that helps you. Okay. Pankaj Sharma, where do you see CAB NRC issue going? Is NRC going to cancel, or still government will go for it? How can they cancel NRC? I mean, NRC is not something that this government brought about. NRC is there on the statute since 2004, and it was brought about by the UPA government, not by the NDA government. And NRC is very much on the statute. And you could go and file a PIL tomorrow and take a mandamus to force the government to implement NRC. That is the actual situation of the NRC, in spite of all the propaganda against it. Yogesh Soman, time to call on Shefali Vaidyaji for temples. You had an interaction with Shefali Vaidyaji. Yes, you had an interaction here. And of course, that was about PETA. But then whenever another opportunity arises, we'll definitely have her here. So your books aren't available in Kindle format. Can you please arrange it? Why? All my books are available in Kindle format. I don't know why you are not able to get it. See, I have had 3 books. All 3 of them were published, and one of them, last one, I have removed from Bloomsbury. That was on pre-order. So that one, of course, you will not get, because that is now being republished by Garud. The other 2 books, the Krishna trilogy books, are very much available in both formats. The Krishna trilogy books, the Krishna Yogeshwar and the Krishna Gopeshwar. Krishna Gopeshwar being the first one. And this one we'll announce it this week. Let me promise you this. This Article 370 CAA book will be announced this very week. Yogesh Soman, mine to be your apprentice, or you want to become my apprentice? Welcome. In what way? Why don't you write the contact at jaipurdialogues.com? Write me an email. Let's see. Ebucho Sheki, sir, how come it is still day in Jaipur? The window behind you. You want me to convert it into night? You really want? Okay, I'll convert it into night. My director tells me not to. Well, it's an artificial window. Dr. Deepak Guru, Dr. Ambedkar said Dalits were discriminated, and all that Bhima Koregaon drinking water incident. What is reality, sir? I think somebody asked me last time. You only asked me, Deepak, didn't you? Why are you asking the same question again and again? I told you about the Bhima Koregaon, that there were 2 armies. There was an English army, there was a British army, there was a Peshwa army. Then there were 2 companies in that. one of the British company comprised of Mahars, and that fought the Peshwa company that comprised of Arabs. So you have to choose whether it was company versus company, or it was army versus army. What these people do, that on the British side, they take the company, and on the Peshwa side, they take the Peshwa, the army. So company versus army, that never happens. It's either army versus army or company versus company. Take your pick. Okay, next question. Okay, Seth, that's wonderful. And I think I have finished in 1 hour, 21 minutes. And that's great. I will have a good night's sleep now. Thank you very much for once again firing so many questions at me and making this show really the centerpiece of all our Jaipur dialogues effort, the Jaipur Dialogues endeavor. This has become the centerpiece. Thanks to all your participation. Wonderful having you here. Do like, subscribe, and share, and do keep contributing to us. I think Jaipur Dialogues is going places because of your enthusiasm, because of your encouragement, and because of your inspiration. Thank you once again. Good night.